Shemai! Croeso! Welcome to Uned 20, which is 20. But of course, if you're telling the time, it's ugain. So if you're saying 20 past something, it's ugain or 22. Ugain dairgloth. So 22, 2 o'clock. But that's not what we learnt this week. We learnt this week de or eich, which is you in the informal and the formal. De being the informal, eich being the formal. You always know it's formal because it's got the ch in it, the ch, so the eich. We learnt some new words as well. And of course, I think I gave the spoiler away that this was going to have soft mutations in it, treiglad meddal, and but only if you're using de, the informal. So an example of that could be beth yw dy enw di, however, so that hasn't got a mutation because enw begins with e, which doesn't translate. However, if you go ble mae dy ddosbarth di, then that should of course be dosbarth, which is class. So now we need to know soft mutations. Ble mae dy ddosbarth di. However, if you're using eich, there's no mutation. We get away with it, which is fantastic. So, dyma eich ffeil chi. Here is your file. Dyma eich tocyn chi. Here is your ticket. So we've gone through these different ones, but however, when you start going into does, it's a soft mutation. Eich, no mutation. As is a small unit. However, if you're answering that question, this is where the unit got a bit longer. Because of unit 19, we've learnt about the, so my, has a nasal mutation. So if you're in a 2 and 4 conversation with someone and you're saying, ble mae dy ddosbarth di, where is your class? If you're asked that and you say my class is, you've got to say my fy nosbarth, because the brings in the nasal mutation. So I've written both sets down on top of this page here. So I've got my nasal mutations, my T goes into NH, you got C, and so on and so forth, as well as the soft mutations, because you need them to ask the question, you need the nasal to answer if you're using my, the. So my fy nosbarth, we had some examples here, and of course has a soft mutation as well. So if I was saying Port Talbot, for example, so my fy nosbarth Port Talbot am at 9 o'r gloch. There you go. So my class is in Port Talbot at 9 o'clock. So that was one example of what we went through today. We had a nice little spinny wheel of fortune going on there as well. And then we looked at diddordebau, or interests and hobbies, and how we would ask questions about that. So, beth wyt ti'n hoffi ei wneud yn dy amser sbar? So, what do you like doing in your spare time? And so that's the informal version. The formal version, beth dych chi'n hoffi ei wneud yn eich amser sbar? Now, amser begins with an A, which hasn't got a... in fact, no, it's eich, so it wouldn't mutate anyway. If you're using de, and it did begin with another letter that does mutate, then you'd need to mutate it if you're asking the question that way. So, lesson here, stick to formal. If you stick to formal, then you don't need to translate anything. That's Tom's top tip of learning Welsh. And then we went through practicing or kind of relearning the soft mutations, so, and using de in a sentence as well. So, yn dy dairi di'n mynd I daiddio I drioci. So, family going to daiddio and drio, I've forgotten what daiddio is, taiddio and drioci. And then, ydy dy gariad di'n mynd I Gaerdydd I ganu. They should all, of course, be C's. So, cariad, Caerdydd, canu. So is that partner, Cardiff, singing. I ganu, because of course the E causes mutation. Like if I'm going to somewhere, mynd I Gaerdydd. I'm going to Cardiff. The example was on the page in front of me. And we also went through a very funny conversation which has got, if you are one with Welsh humour, then you might be aware of it. Richard took us through this, and also Biddy, before I go into this, we've all signed up for a speaking oral exam. So we've been going through test questions of what they might ask us. We've been told that the exam will be very short, but of course we need to be aware of our mutations, what tense we're in, is it present, past or future tense, and we need to recognise those patterns and we need to answer as best we can. And apparently it's done and dusted within like 10, 15, 20 minutes, so it's very short because that's going to fly by. But this question, so I'm going to go through the whole conversation. So the conversation that we had here was all done in the formal. So ble mae eich te chi? So of course there's no mutation there because it's eich. But if we change this conversation into the informal and we go with dy, ble mae dy de di? So te becomes day because the T goes to a D. And then dy de di di, your black tie. Dwi ddim yn cofio, I can't remember. Ydy yn dy di di? So is it in your house? So ty has become D because we've used the dy before it. And then we go neu gyda dy dad di, or with your dad. So tad has become dy dad di. And then bobl bach, ydy dy de di yn dy di neu gyda dy dad di? Does dim syniad gyda fi. So this is where you get sentences with lots of D's when you're talking about your something else in the informal. So that was the kind of what we went through today, and then we went back through some more questions that we might be asked at the oral examination. Some questions are kind of standalone, sut mae tywydd heddiw. Mae hi'n gymylog heddiw, it's cloudy today. But they might say, what might they say? I've forgotten the questions in the past tense. But they might ask for questions in a different tense. And if that happens, then we need to know how to respond. So instead of making a fool of myself here on the camera for you, I'm going to find them. Here we go. You might get asked, sut roedd y tawedd ddoe? How was the weather yesterday? Now you can't say mae hi'n gymylog because that's today, so you need to go past tense, which is roedd hi'n heulog, sunny yesterday. It wasn't when I filmed this, but you get the gist. So some questions are standalone. Some other questions, they might ask, ble dych chi'n hoffi wneud yn eich amser spa? What do you like doing in your spare time? Dwi'n hoffi chwarae pêl-droed. Perfect. But they might say, gyda phwy? With who? They might follow up with a question. Gyda my brawd. With my brother. I think that's right. So that's what we've been doing. Next week, we are looking at commands. So we had a little teaser with stopiwch. Basically, from what I gather, is the magic that makes everything a command. And you might see it in signs around Pembrokeshire. So have a look for where you can see WCH at the end of verbs, because that's telling you to do something. There you go. Atebwch, answer. Answer this, and it's a command. That's one for you to think about. I'll be back next week. I am Tom from the Early Breakfast Show on Pure West Radio. You can find me on the Early Breakfast 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. weekdays. I'll see you there. Hwyl fawr.